Welcome to the Pub Sports Radio, Ian Cameron Sports Report for Tuesday, November 24th. If you're a college basketball fan and bettor, less than 24 hours away from the start of the college basketball season, then you're going to love this show because it's a college basketball season preview. That's what the entire show is going to be after we recap Monday Night Football, which we're going to do right now. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers falling short last night against the LA Rams, and quite simply, the game breaks down as simply as this. Jared Goff was better than Tom Brady last night. Now, both of them threw two interceptions in the game. Both of them made mistakes. But when the game was on the line, Jared Goff, without a running game last night, to be honest, neither team had a lot of success running the football. So it was going to come down to which quarterback was going to be able to make the plays in the passing game to lead their team to victory. Jared Goff put the drive together late in the fourth quarter to put his team ahead, and Tom Brady, when he had that chance, couldn't respond, throwing the game-ending interception under 2 minutes to go, which allowed the LA Rams to essentially run out the clock and hold on to the victory last night. 27-24, LA Rams getting the victory and the point spread cover, winning outright, in fact, as 4.5-point underdogs. I mentioned leaning to the Rams on yesterday's show. Used to get very upset, I did, when I leaned in a certain direction and I didn't bet that side and they'd end up winning. It used to really drive me nuts. It drove me crazy, in fact. It really got to me that, hey, I had the right idea and I didn't make that bet. I didn't place that bet on the Rams last night. It's not something that bothers me anymore, because as I've gotten older, and I think it's come with age, as I've now entering 10 plus years in this business now for me, which is hard to believe, I've just gotten used to placing so many bets that, if one bet that I thought about making wins and I didn't make it, so what? It's not the end of the world. There's going to be dozens and hundreds and thousands of more bets across all sports that I'm going to end up involved in the course of my betting lifetime. So to me, I just don't let myself get consumed in the anger, all the disappointment that, I didn't bet the LA Rams last night. I take solace in the fact that, at least my thought process was correct. I didn't trust Tom Brady against an elite defensive line because we had seen the Bucs offense and Brady struggle in losses to the Saints twice, to the Bears, which I also mentioned when I previewed the show yesterday on this program. And it came to fruition again. They got pressure on Brady. The Aaron Donald-led defensive line made an impact, and Tom Brady was just not right the whole night. He was through multiple interceptions, was inaccurate with a couple of passes. I remember they went for it on 4th and 1. He was totally inaccurate with that pass. It was a very easy throw to make, at least for Tom Brady. It should be. And he was just totally off with the throw. And it was just one of many examples last night of how the defensive line had their fingerprints all over that win for the LA Rams, and they knocked Tom Brady off the spot. They got him, they basically did not allow him to get settled in the pocket at any point last night during that game, and it obviously went a long way toward the LA Rams getting that victory last night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So the Rams get the money, and the game just goes over the total of 48.5 thanks to that late field goal. It was 24-24, so it was pretty much going to go over the total unless that game went to overtime and it ended in a tie. But that was unlikely to happen, and sure enough, the Rams win it late in the fourth quarter with a big win for them on the road against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So that's why I say Jared Goff had a great game as well last night, because his completion rate was excellent. The passing game, without a running game, he was able to move the ball through the air throughout that game. Yeah, he made a couple of mistakes, but game on the line, needed a drive, needed points. He moved the team down the field. Got to give Jared Goff credit for that. And basically, when the game was on the line, he got the better of Tom Brady, helping the Rams get that victory. All right, that is the look back at Monday Night Football. The rest of the show now is going to be college basketball talk, getting ready for this upcoming season. Just some generalities before tomorrow's opening tip-off. I know everyone's excited that college basketball is back. I'm excited. But if there's ever been a season where it is just screaming at you to slow down, take a deep breath, take it easy, Start slow, low volume, low unit size bets. This is the season to heed that advice. We are walking into a minefield here to start the college basketball season. We're already seeing COVID-19 cases throughout multiple teams. We've had programs shutting things down already. Tennessee, of course, one of many, Rick Barnes' team, but that's just one of the issues. Canceled games, lack of practice and a proper camp for a lot of these teams. And that's especially going to be detrimental to teams with either not a lot of returning starters. And it's not just so much returning starters. The thing that I'm going to point out in terms of things that I look at, returning starters used to be the be-all, end-all for me preparing for college basketball year in and year out. I find returning minutes is a more accurate stat. It's a better stat to use in terms of gauging the returning production and experience on a particular team. So that's something that I've really incorporated into my own handicapping of college basketball the last couple of years. I'm more interested in the returning number of minutes. I'm interested in returning starters too, but there are a lot of teams where they have incredible depth on their bench where the guys on the bench are going to get a lot of minutes, and those guys might be returning, to the team, even though a lot of their starters have jettisoned due to graduation, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the teams that may not be, feeling that negativity as much of the lack of returning starters. If they've got a deep bench, and a lot of those guys got good minutes last year, impactful minutes on the basketball court, those teams are going to be in better shape, to be able to withstand losing starters. So that's something I think that is worth mentioning. Try to find out returning minutes as well, not just returning starters, to keep that in mind throughout the course of the season. Obviously, we've got lots of coaching changes, and I think that's where I'm going to start. We'll go through several bet on teams, bet against teams from a majority of the conferences as well here on the show. But first of all, we should start with coaching changes because, look, it is tough enough in a normal college basketball season to go through coaching changes and integrate new systems, new schemes, and a new coaching staff at the start of a normal season. Doing it this season with COVID-19, interrupting, practice and training camps for all of these teams, good luck with that. It's going to be even more difficult. So I don't want to say every single team with a new head coach this year is a bet against team at the beginning, but you have to make extra certain you've got factors that work in your favor: returning talent, continuity, maybe a senior point guard, senior backcourt. Maybe they're a very good defensive team, so bringing in a new coach isn't going to be the worst thing in the world, if he's changing things up, but you can still are a pretty good defensive basketball team. So just all of those things, keep that in mind. So let's quickly run through the 24 coaching changes that were made this season. Alabama State, they have a new head coach in Mo Williams, who is a assistant coach at CS Northridge. He's taking over there. Obviously, we're talking about a program that is, a SWAC team. It is we're talking about very low level in terms of, Division I college basketball. They were only 8-24 last season. You would think this is a challenging situation for him. There's not a whole 36% of player minutes returning this year for this team. That's not very good. There's going to be a little bit of a scheme changes. It looks like they're going to be playing faster. This was a slower paced team last year. So you got system change, scheme change, new coach, not a lot of returning production back. Bet against situation for me, in my opinion, when it comes to Alabama State, no question. Alcorn State, Landon Bussey, taking over as the new coach, Prairie View assistant. This is going to be another challenge with only one starter back. There's going to be another little bit of a change in going from a half court to a more full court up tempo offensive basketball team. So this is another tough transition, I think, for Alcorn State as well with the new coach. East Tennessee State, they say goodbye to Steve Forbes after 5 seasons, who've done a magnificent job with that East Tennessee State Buccaneers program. And he's gone to Wake Forest. He's got a hell of a job there to inherit a program that was left in tatters, really, by the disastrous run that was Danny Manning. But nevertheless, I wish Steve Forbes the best. They did hire a good one, Wake, but you're going to have patience with him because he's taken over a tough situation. We'll get to him later. But as far as East Tennessee goes, Jason Shea takes over as the new coach. He was an assistant under Forbes. So to me, this is a transition that won't be as bad in terms of the players left over. Problem is, they have a completely new starting lineup. They only have 10% of their player minutes returning. It's an issue. And even though, so the coaching continuity is not as bad as, say, the last two I mentioned, there is continuity there. But again, you're ushering in so many new faces. It's almost like you're going to have to teach them all over again. You're not going to have that those holdover players from last year to sort of steer the ship for the new players coming in, even though you've got a guy that's been an assistant here. So it's not an easy spot for Jason Shea, East Tennessee State. Georgia Southern, they have a new coach, Brian Berg, Texas Tech assistant, taking over now as this program. Not surprising. Chris Beard's that good of a coach that some of his assistants are going to get poached. And there's going to be interest for guys that work under a head coach of his caliber. And I think that's exactly what we've seen here with Georgia Southern. They're probably going to go slower in terms of their pace because they were a faster paced team last year under Mark Byington, who's now left for another job. And with only 18% of last year's player minutes returning and a scheme change, going to be, I think, some growing pains here and some struggles. So I would categorize Georgia Southern as another team that you'd be looking at betting against. Grand Canyon, Bryce Drew, remember him? Former Vanderbilt head coach, now taking over here at Grand Canyon after Dan Marley, the Phoenix Suns great, who is now gone and left that program after 7 seasons. So it'll be interesting to see how Bryce Drew is back in the coaching ranks. Look, the Vanderbilt job is a really, really tough job. I obviously Bryce Drew's disappointed the way it worked out for him there. But, I think in this situation, Drew is going to be working in, a little bit of a system change compared to the way they played under Marley. The good news is they have some returning talent, although only 2 starters back. Pretty decent basketball team the last few years, although they did dip last year to 13-17 straight up. I'm pretty neutral on this. I don't think Grand Canyon's a strong bet against with the new coach, but I don't necessarily think I'd be rushing to bet on them either. It's a wait and see for me here in this one. Illinois, Chicago, Steve McLean out, Luke Yaklich in as the new coach here at Illinois, Chicago. The Flames out of the Horizon League. It'll be interesting to see how this transition goes. UIC definitely has had a little bit of an up and down run of it the last few years. They don't have a very experienced roster this year. 2 starters back. That's it. It's going to be interesting to see how he brings the Texas style under Shaka Smart here to Illinois, Chicago. We'll have to see how that goes. You would definitely think that this team is going to try to slow things down, play pretty solid defense. It's an inexperienced team, no question. There are concerns. So this could be a little bit of a tough transition here for Luke Yaklich here with Illinois, Chicago. How about Iona now? Another coaching change, and this was probably the biggest name coaching change and the biggest high-profile coaching change, even though it's not a high-profile program, Iona, although they've been consistently the team to beat most years in the Metro Atlantic. But Rick Pitino back in the college ranks at Iona. He is just going to use this, I think, as a job, parlay this into a bigger job. I don't think he's at Iona for the long haul. I don't think he's ever been dedicated to Iona for the long haul, in my opinion. We'll see how it goes here. This is a team that, it's funny, everybody thinks Rick Pitino's here, Iona's going to be phenomenal. They're going to win this conference. I don't think so. I follow the Metro Atlantic as much, if not more, than any other mid-major conference. I like Siena better than Iona. I like St. Peter's better than Iona. Hell, I think I like Quinnipiac and even maybe Niagara and Monmouth better than Iona in this conference. I think Iona's going to need time. It's just not, you snap your fingers, you got Uncle Rick Pitino here, and you're going to all of a sudden be an outstanding basketball team. I think it's going to be challenging, and you've already got him bitching and complaining on Twitter that we need May Madness, push the season back, push the season back. And his team's dealing with COVID-19. They've had to shut down their activities because of it. And now he's bitching that we can't start the season now. We should be waiting. So that tells me right there, first of all, his team's got COVID. Second of all, I think he's worried his team's not ready yet, to play good basketball early in the season. So all this nonsense that, he's going to take over the Metro Atlantic, calm down now. I think they're going to struggle early in the season. I'm looking at Iona as an overrated, overvalued bet against team, early in the season. That's my thoughts there when it comes to Rick Pitino. As far as the style goes, Tim Kluse was up and down, full court, try to force turnovers, kind of pressing style. That's what Rick Pitino does. And so the system is in place. It's not going to be something that's unfamiliar to these Iona kids, but I just don't think they're going to be as good, as I think people think they might be. James Madison, Mark Byington, I just mentioned how he had left as the Georgia Southern coach. Well, this is his new gig, James Madison, which was just a dismal season for them last year, 9-21. This is going to be a team that, when you look at what's coming in here, James Madison was one of those teams. They were an up-tempo team. They could score, but they were a hideous defensive team last year. The system is pretty much seamless because they're going to play that same style, up-tempo, up and down the basketball court. So I would, and it looks like in terms of this talent, they got over half of their returning player minutes back last year, which is a good sign. This is actually one of those situations where James Madison could be in better shape. Moving forward, we'll have to wait and see. Loyola Marymount, Marquette assistant Stan Johnson taking over from Mike Dunlap. And this is where we're going to see a significant pace change. You look at, in terms of totals, taking advantage of pace changes from one season to the next. Loyola Marymount was as slow as a snail, last year. And for the last couple of seasons under Mike Dunlap. Stan Johnson under the Steve Wojciechowski coaching tree at Marquette, coached under him, and we know they play up and down, up tempo. So you can expect a much faster paced Loyola Marymount team. They're a team I've got circled for over the total from a game to game standpoint early in the season. When you look at the returning talent on this team, it's not necessarily great. We'll have to wait and see how long it's going to take. This is a pretty significant, change of style that's going to be undergoing here with this Loyola Marymount program. So there could be some growing pains, but definitely more than anything, over the total is what I'm looking at for Loyola Marymount game in and game out. We've got Northern Colorado. They say goodbye to Jeff Linder, who of course is on his way now to the Mountain West, taking over the Wyoming job. And now it's going to be Steve Smiley, an assistant under Linder for Northern Colorado. So this is a really solid transition. This was a good Northern Colorado team in the Big Sky Conference last year, 22-9, straight up, really good season. It's a seamless transition. It's a guy that has been there and is assistant. Players know him. Players know the system, what to expect. 3 starters back, a lot of returning production. I think this is actually one of the rare situations where this might even be a bet-on situation, even though it's a new coach, just because you've got that similarity factor ongoing. So this is one of the best transitions possible, I think, of all the coaching changes in the offseason. We've got Samford, Bucky McMillan taking over as the head coach, a guy coming right out of the high school ranks. And you know how I feel about that. I know it's football, but remember Tony Sanchez going from high school to UNLV football? How did that go for him? Not well. So this is one where, 10-23 team last year. This is just an enormous step up in class for a guy going from coaching high school basketball to college. 8% of returning player minutes back. It's a bet against situation, plain and simple, here at Samford. Southeast Missouri State, Brad Korn, the new coach there, Kansas State assistant. I don't know if I'd want to hire anybody under Bruce Weber, to be honest with you, but nevertheless, he is now coaching Southeast Missouri State. Kansas State's gone backward, of course, the last couple of years. I don't know. Southeast Missouri State, terrible year, new coach, not a huge system change, but not a lot of talent last year. A situation where it's probably still going to take some time for this team to improve. So probably a lean to the bet against category here with them. Texas State, Terrence Johnson, assistant, taking over from Danny Casper. Texas State should be a pretty solid basketball team. this year. It was a little bit of an unexpected coaching change here for this Texas State team, losing Casper, but the roster has got, a lot of returning talent. So maybe a slight bet on situation. Neutral to bet on is probably where I stand here with Texas State. UAB, Andy Kennedy, remember from his days at Ole Miss, went to television to work for ESPN for a few years, and now he's back in the fold here with UAB. Should be interesting to see, but definitely he's a coach that did some pretty good things at Ole Miss. Now he's going to be here at Birmingham. It's a job that he wants. It's a job that he's excited about. It's a UAB team that should be one of the better teams in their conference this year for sure. Lots of returning talent back. Definitely UAB should be fine. This is another one where it's a coaching change, but it's one where it should be a little bit of a better situation. Maybe not immediately, because even in these bet-on situations, you didn't get a lot of court time, practice time. There still could be a bump in the road early on. But overall, I think you're going to see that be a better transition than a lot of others. UC Riverside, Mike Magpayo, the assistant, taking over from David Patrick here. This is a team that should be pretty good, actually, Riverside, in this one. From the Big West, they've got lots of returning talent, 4 starters, a 17 and 15 overall last year, a winning point spread team last year. I think they could be a good point spread team this season. I know they've got their opening game looking ahead to Wednesday. They're on the board playing on Wednesday, this Cal Riverside team, and they're taking on Pacific, and they're getting 6.5 points. And I absolutely am interested in the Riverside Highlanders there, plus the points against Pacific. I think it's a situation where that team is going to be pretty solid this year in that conference, and Pacific's got some question marks going into this year. But just in general, getting back to the coaching change, this is not a terrible one at all for Riverside. In fact, they should be better suited to handle the coaching change than a lot of other teams. UNC Wilmington, Takayo Siddle is the new head coach here. And it's amazing because he coached here at Wilmington as an assistant many years ago under Kevin Keats. So he's actually been with this program before. And then, of course, when Kevin Keats got the NC State coaching job, he went to NC State with Keats to be an assistant at NC State under him. So he stayed with Keats there, and now he's back to NC Wilmington as the head man here. And right away, he's been linked at the hip with Kevin Keats all these years. It's going to be a up-tempo, fast-paced, full-court type of team from a style perspective, UNC Wilmington. That should be something that, the program certainly is familiar with that. I know the previous coach, C.B. McGrath, when he took over from Keats, first year they went fast. Then he slowed things down a little bit last year in terms of tempo. And now they're going to probably speed things up again. So look for overs, I think, with this Wilmington team. And I've always liked Kevin Keats as a coach. I think he did a good job here. Even at NC State, it's been some ups and downs, but give him time. And I think NC State's still going to be a competitive group there. But I think this is a good coaching change. He worked under a really good head coach in Keats, Takayo Siddle. I think he'll do a good job here, and look for them maybe to be a little bit of a bet on team and also play some overs with this team from a totals perspective. Wake Forest, finally, people have listened. Danny Manning is gone at long last. He drove this program into the ditch. 6 pathetic seasons, as far as I'm concerned, where this program didn't get better. In fact, you could argue they got worse. Well, he's finally gone, and all they did was snag one of the hottest head coaching hires in the offseason, and Steve Forbes. East Tennessee did a great job there. The problem is for Forbes is not a whole lot back for Wake. He doesn't have his recruits in here yet. No offseason. You're going to go from a fast-paced team to they're going to try to slow it down, play defense. They aren't going to be a good offensive team this year. This is an under team for sure, totals-wise. This is going to be a dead-nuts under team. They're going to be in a lot of low-scoring games. I love the hire, but don't expect miracles overnight. It's going to take time. It's simple as that. I mean, it was that much of a problem and that much of a disaster and a dumpster that Danny Manning left behind here at Wake Forest. It's just going to take time. I don't care how good Steve Forbes. You could bring in Vince Lombardi. You could bring in, think about any of the great coaches in the history of any sport. You could bring in anyone. You could bring in virtually anybody, and they could be an all-time great coach, and you're not going to get them to turn this Wake Forest ship around overnight. Just ask Mike Young last year at Virginia Tech. Great coach at Wofford. It's going to take him time to get them going again. Same thing here with Steve Forbes at Wake Forest. Western Illinois, Rob Jeter, head coach here of Western Illinois, assistant at Minnesota last year, actually was a head coach previous to that as well. So this guy does have head coaching experience. That's good news. We'll have to wait and see how that goes here. It's very interesting because Jeter, a long time ago, was with Bo Ryan at Wisconsin, but his latest head coaching stint when he was at Milwaukee, brought that same kind of style, methodical, look to slow things down. That's what you're going to get out of Western Illinois. So you're looking at a pretty good under team here this year. It's definitely not going to be an easy road because they don't have a whole lot back. They have no starters back this year, Western Illinois. So this is not going to be easy. So what they're going to do is they're just going to make sure, all right, snail pace, walk the ball up the court. We don't want to get blown out. We want to try to be respectable. That's the kind of style I think you can expect from Western Illinois, especially with this head coach, Rob Jeter, taking over. So under the total from a game-to-game standpoint, Western Illinois, it wouldn't shock me. They had 13 overs, 11 unders last year. They're going to have more unders than overs this year. I'm pretty confident in that. Same with Wake Forest. I mentioned with Forbes, 20 overs, 10 unders last year with Wake Forest. I think that's going to flip a little bit, maybe more under. I don't know about more unders than overs, but much closer to 50-50 at the very least now with Forbes and that deliberate style that he's going to bring to Wake Forest this year. Let's see what else we've got. Western Michigan. Oh, this is a bad situation here. Clayton Bates, the assistant, is taking over here, but they've got nobody back. It's a Western Michigan program that's been bottom tier in the MAC for many years now. It's a program that definitely heading downhill. It's a program that I think they're going to get routed, by the way, by Butler. They're playing Butler on Wednesday in their first game. I know Butler's down a little bit this year under Lavelle Martin. They're maybe not quite as good as they've been the last couple of years, but I think Western Michigan still gets walloped in that game. Their situation is absolutely dreadful coming into this new season. And I think Clayton Bates and Western Michigan in for growing pains. Wisconsin Green Bay, Link Darner is out, and Will Ryan, who is a Division II coach, is taking over here at Wisconsin Green Bay. And Will Ryan, it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Obviously, he's actually the son of Bo Ryan at Wisconsin, so it'll be interesting to see. However, it's not he doesn't play snail pace basketball like Bo did. It's medium, I guess. It's in between. It's not like slow, but it's not extreme tempo either. So they are definitely going to be a team that's going to play slower, Green Bay, than they did last year. Of course, under Link Darner, this was one of the faster paced teams tempo-wise in college basketball. That's definitely going to go down a little bit. So maybe some value under. Again, you look at a team that was 18-12 to the over last year, and now they're going to slow down the pace a little bit now with Will Ryan, son of Bo, taking over here at Green Bay with the Phoenix. So you could see this team play some unders here. Wyoming, Jeff Linder, one of my favorite coaches. Northern Colorado is a team I bet a few times. I don't bet a lot of Big Sky basketball, but Northern Colorado is one of those teams that I was riding them and betting on them a bunch last year and cashing a lot of tickets with them. That's a coach I respect. It was time to move on from Alan Edwards, who, of course, took over from the legendary Larry Shiat at Wyoming. And Alan Edwards just never got this team going at Wyoming. They've been, near the bottom feeder in the Mountain West the last few years. They're going to be better. And in fact, even though this is a new coach, he had 20 plus winning seasons, 3 of the last 4 years at Northern Colorado. He's got half of his returning player starters minutes back, 3 starters overall. Wyoming's always been used to playing, very slow paced, rely on good offense, rely on good defense. And Linder's Northern Colorado teams were pretty damn solid in terms of defensive field goal percentage allowed. I think it's a great hire, and it may be early. There's a couple bumps in the road, but I think even after just a month, you're going to see Wyoming really start to click. Maybe the first month, again, there's some struggles, but after that, I would look Wyoming as a bet on team just because I respect this coach that much. I am that big of a fan of Jeff Linder. I think it was a good hire at Wyoming, and he'll do a really good job there. All right, so those are the coaching changes, and I wanted to make sure I spent time on those because you've got to be understanding and aware of the coaching changes in a year like this when there's been a completely disrupted off season in terms of practice time for all of these teams. It's going to be even more difficult to implement new coaching staffs and new schemes throughout this season. All right, let's go. ACC. Let me just throw out bet against teams from each conference very quickly. Look, Virginia's a great team and a lot of people love them. I get it. I'm looking for value in the point spread. Like I'll say this about Virginia. Bold prediction. Virginia is going to cash more overs than unders this year. I'm not, and I mean that. I am looking to bet Virginia games over the total this year. And you think, why would you do that? They've been one of the best defensive teams in the country for years with that suffocating pack line defense. They couldn't shoot straight at all last year. Why would you want to bet Virginia under? Because they finally have some shooting this year. That's why I expect this team to make one of the greatest leaps and improvements in terms of offense as maybe any team in the country. I love what they've done. They bring in Sam Hauser out of Marquette. That guy is just a marksman shooting the basketball. That's going to help. They bring in Jabri Abdur-Rahim, son of Sharif Abdur-Rahim. Remember him, the NBA player from the Vancouver Grizzlies in the 90s? I remember. I do remember when Vancouver had an NBA team, and Sharif Abdur-Rahim was on that team. And here's his son Jabri at Virginia that's just going to make this offense better. Jay Huff, I think, is going to improve as well. He had some tough times last year, but I think this is going to be a much improved offensive team. Yeah, the defense isn't going anywhere. They're still going to be suffocating. But here's the thing with Virginia. They're still going to be lined, 112, 118, 120 in that range from a totals perspective, depending on the opponent. But they're a much better offensive team, and at least I think they're going to be a much better offensive team. So I think there's going to be extreme value over the total with Virginia this year. And my bold prediction for them is that they're going to actually be much more of an over team this year. Maybe people might think I'm crazy saying that, but I really think this is going to be a much improved offensive team. Let's quickly go through bet on and bet against. Miami, to me, is a team worth betting on this year. I think they're going to be a pretty good team. They might have the best backcourt in this conference coming back with Chris Lykes, Cameron McGusty. It's a lot to like with Jim Larinaga has always been a coach I've admired and respected. Miami's a team I would look to bet on. NC State, I mentioned Kevin Keats. I think they could be a little bit of a down the conference, point spread team. I'm not talking about win the conference. Like NC State may not be top half of the conference, but I'm talking about covering point spreads, getting value with these teams against the spread. Miami is 1, NC State's 2, and Virginia Tech is 3 because I really like Mike Young as a coach, and he had a tough transition last year. I think they'll be better. Bet against from this conference, easy, Clemson. Sorry, Brad Brownell is a coach that has never been someone I haven't liked the job he's done at Clemson, period. I think he's underachieved here. I don't love this team coming into this season. I know they have 4 starters back, but 4 starters from a team that was mediocre last year. I don't think that matters much. Boston College is probably a good bet against team as well. It's going to be a tough season for Jim Christian. In fact, this is probably going to be it for him. I don't expect him to have a good year this year, and if he doesn't, he's probably out of there. So that's a team I would look at as a bet against. Let's go on now to the Big Ten. Illinois, Brad Underwood, that's my bet on team. I mean, they're in that clump of teams with Wisconsin and Michigan State, teams that probably have the chance to win this conference. Iowa does, but I am going to be one of those people when it comes to Iowa basketball. In fact, they're a bet against team for me. I think they're way overrated. I think they're way overvalued. I think this team is all offense, no defense. They don't play like a defense. It's what's cost Iowa victories in these big games in years past. They don't play good defense. They don't get stops when they need to. Simple as that. And Fran McCaffrey's a little bit of a ticking time bomb on the sidelines. Who knows when he's going to yell at his players? Who knows when he's going to yell at the refs and just absolutely, lose his shit? I'm sick of looking at him doing that all the time. That's not good for keeping a team focused. Yeah, Iowa to me is just extremely overvalued and overhyped coming into this season. Love Luka Garza, outstanding player, great offensive team. And this is probably a team that I've looked to bet overs, and it's because they can flat out score, but they don't play a lick of defense. And until that changes, the jury for me is absolutely out on this Iowa team. Nebraska, I don't think you can go wrong betting against them. In fact, I think they're playing McNeese State tomorrow. Nebraska's laying 15 in that game. I know McNeese State is got some issues in terms of who's going to return for them, but they also pulled a near upset I think against Texas last year, if I'm not mistaken. Nebraska could be on upset. I mean, Fred Hoiberg's in a tough spot there. I mean, it really is. I mean, that program's been decimated, in my opinion. Big East, Villanova should win it and win it possibly comfortably. Connecticut's the team I'd look at here, bet on. They're in the Big East now. They're, of course, moving there from the AAC. Danny Hurley's team, James Bouknight back. RJ Cole comes in. A cook, one of the best names in college basketball, the big low post presence. This is going to be a good basketball team. They're bet on to me as far as I'm concerned. Bet against teams, Xavier. I think Xavier is definitely a team I'd be worried about. Najee Marshall and Tyreek Jones gone. It's going to be Paul Scruggs, and Travis Steele's going to have to look to see who the hell's going to step up for him as well. There's a lot of losses on that Xavier team. Xavier team that kind of went down a little bit the last couple of years, and now you're losing a lot of key talent. Going to be a tough year, I think, for the Xavier Musketeers in the Big East. So those are bet on and bet against from the Big East. Let's go to the SEC now, or actually Big 12. I'm trying to go. We'll do power conferences, bet on, bet against in order of the conference. Like I said, Illinois to me is a bet on team in the Big 10, as I mentioned. Going to be tough. They're going to be a really good team, improved. I think the fact that they got Ayo Dosunmu back, who's an outstanding player, Bezhanishvili as well, returning to the fold as well, Kofi Coburn. Absolutely outstanding team, well coached. That's the team that has the value, in my opinion. Illinois, Wisconsin, nothing. Micah Potter, I like them a lot. Nate Roivers, Demetric Trice in the backcourt, Brad Davison. That's a really good team too. But I think there's going to be more point spread value for Illinois than for Wisconsin. Rutgers too. Rutgers is bet on as well for me in the Big Ten. I love what Steve Peichel is doing there. They should have been playing in the tournament. What an absolute travesty that they finally make the NCAA tournament and COVID-19 strikes, so it doesn't end up happening. Just brutal luck for them. Brutal amount of bad luck to see that happen for a team that I think deserved it. I'll just want to throw out something. Conference USA, Western Kentucky. This team's not only going to win Conference USA, they are a team that's a force to be reckoned with come NCAA tournament time, in my opinion. This is a really good basketball team. Rick Stansbury's always done a pretty good job here with the Hilltoppers. Charles Bassey, one of the best big men in the country. Luke Frampton, Carson Williams, Tavion Hollingsworth is back controlling the offense from the point. There's a lot to like with Western Kentucky. There is. They play good defense as well. That's a very good basketball team. I like Marshall a lot in that conference as well. And UAB. UAB, with Andy Kennedy, I mentioned him. They'll be a good team. Marshall has all starters back. They have just a whopping amount of their returning production back from last year. One of the most experienced veteran teams in the country. Dan D'Antoni, all hands are on deck for him with that Marshall team. They're going to be really good. They're a bet on for me in Conference USA. A bet against Middle Tennessee, Florida International, Rice. Stand out big time in terms of, teams to bet against. Like these are bottom. Rice especially. Rice is just, you talk about losing everybody. They have lost literally, and they weren't a great team last year, and they've basically starting over from scratch this season. Rice is going to be just a horrible team, I think, in that conference. So that's my brief look at Conference US. UTSA, I'm going to have to see them play well and more consistent before I believe it, because I got my hopes. I got all my hopes up on that team last year. And sure enough, they let me down. And just greatly underachieved, in my opinion. So I'm going to have to see that from my own eyes. The Metro Atlantic, yeah, I'm going to talk Metro Atlantic because I know that conference. Like I said, Iona, I would bet against them. I think Riders on the Storm. Forget Rider on the Storm. Rider is going to get swept up in the Storm this year. This is a fall from grace for Rider. Rider was an elite, or one of the top 3 or 4 teams in the Metro Atlantic last year. They got to replace 5 players that were tops in points and rebounds per game last year. It is an they had to deal with a COVID-19 shutdown this month. They have lost everything, Ryder. It is going to be a tough season for them in the Metro Atlantic this year. Definitely fade City. Niagara, watch out. That team's on the rise. Former Dookie, Greg Paulus, is the head coach of that program now. That's a really good basketball team. Siena, to me, is probably the team that wins the conference. I really like what I'm seeing out of the Saints. They're doing a really, really good job with that program overall. Carmen Masciarello has done a really, really solid job since taking over. They've got lots of key starters back. Their best players are all back in the fold, so look out for them this season. Mountain West. Now, San Diego State with Brian Dutcher, they're going to be a really good program. I know Malachi Flynn is gone, but they're still going to be good at both ends of the floor. There's going to be some issues, I know, with UNLV in terms of consistency, but I like the way they're going. Boise State should be solid. But my number one bet on team from the Mountain West Conference coming into this season is Colorado State. I am a Nico Medved fan. This guy is a very, very strong coach, did a good job at Drake. He inherited a complete shambles program here at Colorado State. Larry Eustace and the whole shenanigans going on with him. And what he got out of this team last year, 20 and 12 straight up. Are you kidding me? To this team that he had to inherit from the bottom. And now they're going to be even better this year. 4 starters back, 65% of their returning minutes. Colorado State, watch out. Bet on team in the Mountain West. They're going to have a big point spread season this year. I mean, they were only 15 and 16 ATS last year, and now they're much better. And now it's year 3 for Medved. Big jump. They're going to be in the upper echelon of the Mountain West this year, in my opinion. Colorado State, bet on. Number 1 bet on team for me this year. Give me a little Nico Medved. Bet against New Mexico. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to fade them. I don't think they're going to be that great. Air Force is going to be hurting a little bit. That's the way I would look at it from a Mountain West standpoint. Let's move on down the rest of these conferences. Just quick hitters. Just giving you some bet against teams here. Pac-12, let's go there now. A lot of love for UCLA, and I understand it. Mick Cronin already got this team having the arrow pointed upward last year, despite the fact they're going completely from, the Steve Alford style of play to the Mick Cronin style, which was slow it down, half court, play good defense. But they adapted to that style pretty well last year. And now they've got obviously top 5 scorers back. Tiger Campbell returning. They've got a couple good freshmen as well. They have a Kentucky transfer coming over as well. Jalen Hill back. Really good UCLA team. Are they ready for the pressure of expectations, though? That's the one thing you wonder about them. Oregon, I think people are sleeping on Oregon this year, and they're not getting talked about as much. But they lost a couple key scorers. Peyton Pritchard, they're just heart and soul point guard is gone. I get that, but they have Will Richardson back. They've Chris Duarte returning, LJ Figueroa. They're going to play good defense because that's just what Oregon does under Dana Altman, and one of the best coaches in the country, Dana Altman. I'll never bet against him, or you're going to need to show me distinct, damn good reasons to fade a Dana Altman team. I think Oregon might be discounted a little bit here. Arizona State, look, they're loaded with offensive talent. This is going to be an over machine. They can flat out fill it up, this team. They will be able to, with Remy Martin, Alonzo Vergi. They bring in Luther Muhammad from Ohio State. Josh Christopher, of course, the highly hyped hot 5-star recruit that was brought in by Bobby Hurley. They're going to be able to score. Can they defend? It's kind of like Iowa West here with this team. Can they defend? Can they get stops when they need to? I'm not so sure. So I think they might be a little overvalued, Arizona State, in my mind. Stanford, I think, will be very good. There's a bet on team in this conference. Stanford, I think they'll be pretty solid. Bet against teams. Washington State, can't go wrong there. I'm waiting for Cal to get going, but it's kind of hit or miss with them. You know what? Down year last year for Larry Kraskowiak at Utah, but he's got a lot of his pieces back. And while, their talent level is probably below some other teams in this conference right now, Larry Kay is a good coach. And it wouldn't surprise me to see this team improve a little bit. They got lots of returning talent, 85% of minutes back, 4 returning starters. Look out for Utah. Talk about a point spread team. They can fly under the radar. I don't think they're going to win the conference or maybe even be top 3 or 4 in the Pac-12, but be solid, be improved, be well coached, be well prepared, which they should be under Larry Kay. Utah can be a good point spread team. SEC. Look, everybody loves Tennessee. Kentucky's not the shoe-in favorite to win this conference. It's actually Tennessee in a lot of people's minds. And yes, they've got an outstanding team on paper. 4 of the top 5 scorers back. John Fulkerson back. They have Keon Johnson, Jaden Springer. They're an outstanding defensive team. They can score. They've got inside-outside scoring. They've got it all. They do. Rebounding. They're a very good rebounding team. But it's Rick Barnes, man. This guy in March has struggled. I don't know how else I can say it to you. Rick Barnes in March has struggled, and he's going to have to get over those issues. If Tennessee is going to ultimately live up to the expectations that a lot of people have for them right now. So that's the concern I've got for Tennessee. Can they live up to the hype? I'm not sure. This has not been a live up to the hype team, football or basketball, the last few years, or live up to the hype program, football or basketball, the last few years. Kentucky, to me, has got concerns. They've got no returning starters, and I know it's reload, not rebuild when it comes to John Calipari at Kentucky, and I know he's got loaded with talent again, but early in the season, this team's going to struggle. This is going to be one of those Kentucky years where they're probably going to have some growing pains in November and December, and then they'll start getting their shit together January, February, and into March. They'll be ready to go by March, but I think early in the season, you can target Kentucky to bet against. LSU, I'm kind of down on LSU with the little FBI scandal that went around with Will Wade's team. They're talented for sure, but with that black cloud hanging over them, I'm not sure what to expect. Florida's another team like Tennessee, really, really talented, no question. But, this is a team that's just never gone up and over that, lived up and made that dramatic improvement up the ladder under Mike White. Alabama and Arkansas, those are the teams I've circled as teams that I think deep sleeper in this SEC. It's Alabama, it's Nate Oates, who as a coach I've loved going back to the Buffalo days. One of the most exciting teams to play with the extreme tempo, shoot a lot of threes, pressure defense. This is going to be a really good team. John Petty back, Jaden Shackelford. They do lose Kyra Lewis. They'll miss him, but they've got and he recruited his tail off. Nate Oates here at Alabama. They brought in a really good class. That is a bet on team all the way. That's also an over team for me, much like it was last year. They're going to be in some shootouts, but I think they're going to be a team that's just able to score so much that they're going to be able to just pull away from teams in a lot of games. I really am high on that Alabama team. Same with Arkansas. Even though Arkansas, loses talent, they do. But Eric Musselman has always been able to just reload a roster, bring in the next group, and play good basketball. And he's such a great coach. He really is. That Arkansas, people are going to look to bet against them because of the loss of returning production from last year. But I think they're going to be better than some people think as well. In terms of bet against teams coming into this season, look, Mississippi State, lots of players gone from last year's team. They're going to struggle, I think, early on. Georgia's just never been a team that's gotten it going under Tom Crean. And, of course, Anthony Edwards, the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft just last week, is no longer there as well. So they've got some transition early in the season. Missouri and Vanderbilt look like absolute bottom feeders in this conference. and it's going to take a while for them to get going. So those teams could be in the bet against category as well moving forward. All right, what else have we got in terms of major conferences? Did we get through them all? Let's see here. I mentioned Western Kentucky, yes, is bet on. I mentioned Colorado State. We went through those as well. Let's go on down the list. West Coast Conference, just quickly, we know Gonzaga is definitely going to win this conference. We know Gonzaga is one of the favorites to win it all in terms of the national championship, no question. I mean, you could, if you want to nitpick and say they lost, a couple guys here and there from last year's team, especially Killian Tilly, okay, but they're still loaded. Offense, defense, inside, outside scoring, the ability to get stops, to rebound, to shoot free throws, make free throws. They've got everything, the whole package. Here's the team I like here, a couple. I think St. Mary's, they're on their way down. They're going to definitely be, I think, a step or two back this year. BYU also, could have a little bit of trouble this year. When you look at it, Pacific, I've got concerns about them. Portland's a dumpster fire. Pepperdine's the team I've got my eye on in terms of bet on this in this conference. And I'm not even a Lorenzo Romar fan. I'm not. I've never really liked him, to be honest with you. But here at Pepperdine, second year for him as the head coach, and he actually did a really good job. Pepperdine was a pretty good team. They had a good offensive team last year. Their leading scorer, Colby Ross, is back. Kessler Edwards as well. The defense stepped up. They play fast pace. They're one of those teams that actually has the scoring a little bit. I think Gonzaga, we talk about if you're going to, be the next best team in the conference in the WCC behind them, you got to be able to defend. I think you got to be able to score because Gonzaga plays fast. They can fill it up. And Pepperdine and BYU, and maybe San Francisco, the Dons as well, they're really the only teams I trust in this conference to consistently put the ball in the bucket. So Pepperdine, to me, is going to be that team that offers point spread value in that conference. Maybe San Francisco as well. BYU, I'm not exactly rushing to bet on them. And St. Mary's, certainly, to me, is a bet against team. St. Mary's, Pacific, Damon Stoudemire, we'll have to wait and see. They have played better defense. That's the good news for Pacific, but they're going to have to rely on that for sure. We'll have to wait and see. But definitely Pepperdine's the team in that conference that stands out to me from a betting perspective in terms of one that should have some value. All right, I've gone longer than normal. I try to keep this show to 30 minutes max, but this is a big day. It's the day before the college basketball season. I wanted to give you a good preview. I don't know if I could give you a better preview than that. We talked coaching changes. We talked, bet against teams from most conferences, not all of them. I'm not going to break down the SWAC and the MEAC and the real low level conferences. Just don't have enough time, but you got a good sense of what I'm looking at in college basketball this season and a preview that'll get you ready for the start of college basketball tomorrow. A reminder on this show, we won't be talking individual college basketball games from a betting perspective daily. I'll pick a game or two in college basketball each day, break it down, give you my opinions and leans from a side and total perspective, just like we do for football on this show, and we'll be starting that tomorrow. So looking forward to college basketball. Tomorrow on the show, not only will we do some college basketball games on the card, but we'll look at Thursday football, some college football, 2 games, and then the 3 NFL games on Thanksgiving Thursday. We'll break all 3 of those games down: Houston, Detroit, Washington, Dallas, Pittsburgh, Baltimore tomorrow on the Ian Cameron Sports Report. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great Tuesday night. And I will see you again tomorrow on Wednesday for another edition of the Pub Sports Radio Ian Cameron Sports Report.